Hi, I'm Madeleine Sorapure. I'm a faculty member at the University of California at Santa Barbara, which is where I am right now. I wish that I could be at the conference in person, but it seemed unsafe to travel, so I'm recording my presentation instead. So let me start by sharing my screen, of course. And let me make my window a little bit bigger up here. Okay. Great. So the title of my presentation is Visualizing COVID-19, Anthropographics in Data Visualizations. Given the theme of our conference, Picturing the Pandemic, I want to begin by pointing out the challenges of visually representing a pandemic that is characterized by invisibility, absence, and loss. First, we have the invisibility of the submicroscopic SARS-CoV-2 virus itself. We've come to recognize this spiky blob as the virus, although of course, this is not a photograph, but rather a drawing by medical illustrators. It's designed to be scientifically accurate, but also to convey the seriousness of the virus via texture, color, and shadows, properties that the virus doesn't actually have. The virus itself is still hidden from us, even as it circulates around us and upends our world. The pandemic has also brought isolation, social disconnection, the passing away of loved ones, and a kind of diffuse but all-encompassing harm. Depicting this visually is challenging. Photographs that seem the most representative are ones like these that show empty streets and cities, the absence of people, physical separations, masks and PPE, socially distanced and virtual events of all kinds, like this conference, a defamiliarized world to which we're unfortunately becoming more and more accustomed. Another important attempt to visually represent the pandemic has been through data visualizations, the static and interactive charts, graphs, maps, and other data displays produced by government agencies, journalists, scientists, academic researchers, and others. Data visualizations are being widely used to facilitate expert analysis in all areas impacted by the pandemic. But in addition, non-experts are a target audience for data visualizations that engage, inform, educate, persuade, model possible futures, and perform other rhetorical functions. People are understandably and wisely relying on data to help guide their everyday decisions in the midst of profound uncertainty and fear caused by a deadly global virus. Indeed, the pandemic has provided a real-time test of public-facing data visualization. Ben Schneiderman, a leading visualization researcher, writes that, quote, the complexity and importance of COVID-19 has put data visualization center stage in worldwide discussions. The hope is that data will, end quote, the hope is that data will convey what is truly happening and that the visualization of data will make it easier for people to gain insight and ultimately make decisions in their own best interests. Here are a couple of pandemic data visualizations that you might be familiar with. This is Flatten the Curve, one of the many variations of Flatten the Curve, a model or projection designed to visually demonstrate that a slower spread of the virus will help our hospitals and healthcare systems manage the crisis. One of John Byrne Murdoch's line graphs from the Financial Times that show the cumulative number of cases in different countries, annotated with commentary about specific countries and how the measures they've implemented are reflected in the position and slope of their line. The Johns Hopkins University dashboard, one of many dashboards online that report a range of pandemic data with interactive options that readers can use to explore different locations, timeframes, and other variables. To be sure, these are informative, helpful visualizations of data. But one feature they share with the photos we looked at earlier is the absence of people. The people most impacted, those who contracted the virus and those who died, are typically only represented as the empty space under a line or as an indistinguishable dot of ink or pixel of color in a bar chart or on a map. But the truth is that these data visualizations represent actual people, and that in addition to the people behind the data, there is another group of people gathering and visualizing the data, and yet another group of people reading, sharing, and learning from the data. There are, as Sarah Slobin puts it, human marks all over data and its Another model for representing the people in and around data seems better suited both to data visualization as a fully rhetorical mode of communication and to this particular moment where data visualizations had become essential for understanding and acting in the pandemic world. I use the term anthropographics to designate this other approach that humanizes data by drawing attention in a variety of ways to the connections between data and the humans represented by, representing, and viewing that data. I would argue that these anthropographic design strategies play a role in making COVID-19 data visualizations more accessible and impactful as communications to a general audience. Although the term anthropographics has been used in previous research to designate only the graphic elements of a data visualization, for instance, some of these icons across the top of the slide, I see the term as encompassing other contextualizing, anthropomorphizing strategies in a project. For instance, the style and tone of the text and the types of interactivity that are offered. Anthropographics have also been studied as a means to achieve only a few rhetorical goals with readers, specifically to increase empathy and to increase pro-social attitudes and behaviors. Whereas I see anthropographics feeding into a wider range of rhetorical goals. In the context of COVID-19 communications, some of the most important goals of data visualizations addressed to a general audience are to educate. After all, most of us are not epidemiologists and have little prior knowledge that can help us navigate this new terrain. To inform so that we know what's going on locally and globally and can plan our everyday lives accordingly. And to persuade so that we're more likely to take up behaviors that experts tell us will ensure our safety. I'd like to continue then by looking at several projects that use anthropographics to increase the engagement and insights of readers. I'll look in detail at 2 interactive data visualization projects, draw some conclusions, and then list a few other projects that use anthropographics in interesting ways. My first example is called Making Sense of COVID-19 Through Simulations. It's by Stephanie Yee and Tony Chu, and it's a set of simulations that uses anthropographics along with other interactive and textual features to engage, inform, and try to influence the behavior of readers. The authors observe that the simulations can help readers, quote unquote, gain intuition about what it means to reduce the spread of the virus. Let me now stop sharing actually and share the project website. Right, so this is the site making sense of COVID-19 through simulations. The authors begin by directly addressing readers, setting up an initial scenario in which readers can envision themselves. Let's say you meet up with 2 friends in the park. If one is infected but doesn't know it, that weekend outing can result in the virus spreading. Immediately following, a diagram uses color to designate, a diagram displays hypothetical results for that scenario. And I'm just scrolling very slowly to get that in view. The diagram uses color to designate susceptible and infected people. And it uses differently styled human icons, also known as we people, to represent young, middle-aged, and older people. Arrows and proximity show the connections between people, and textual annotations show generic locations: the local park, the emergency room, the local grocer, and a nursing home, I believe. The visualization also assigns specific hypothetical characteristics to some of these icons to make them more individualized and relatable. For example, 68-year-old Army vet, chronic insomnia, immunocompromised. 8-year-old child waiting for mom, cystic fibrosis, immunocompromised, and so on. What we see here is that along with the anthropographic icons are textual strategies that draw readers in: direct address, generic locations, and annotations that make the scenario easily relatable. These all play a role in bringing the human elements for the visualized victims, as well as the authors and readers, to the fore in this project. The rest of the project is composed of several simulations that continue to use these human icons, we people icons, as anthropographics. And here, interactive options help draw out the human connections. So the first simulation illustrates uncontrolled spread with exponential growth. And as you can see, it kind of runs the simulation. You can reset, start, and each simulation is a little different based on the algorithms running behind the scenes. The second simulation shows the impact of social distancing on hospital bed availability. And again, as you scroll in, the simulation starts, and various changes take place, and then at the end you have the kind of tally along with the visual representation of it in this graph. The third visualization allows readers to interact and to set some variables in terms of connection types. So this has to do with social distancing. And you can see that it initially starts with all the connection types checked. So these folks are having social contact, non-essential work, essential work, family, and immediate family contact. And you can see that the simulation projects 11 people having died as a result of that. What readers can do is reset this and select, deselect certain variables. So let's say no social contact, no essential work, so none non-essential work, and only immediate family, and then run that scenario and see the difference that these different variables make, in kind of in a projected way. Here, zero people have died and only 29 were infected. So the ability to reset, change the options, and replay the simulation means that readers can see the stark differences that that result from different choices that they themselves might be making on a daily basis. Each time the simulation is run, it produces slightly different results, making this more realistic than a predictable animation would be. The fourth simulation allows readers to set different time periods for social distancing. So initially, the time period is set at 40 days, and when you run the simulation, it runs, tells you how many people have been infected, recovered, how many people have died, and so on. And readers can go ahead and say, well, what if we socially distance for 83 days, let's say, and then run that scenario. And again, see the difference that these different choices make. By interacting with the simulations that address their most pressing concerns, what type of social distancing should they do and how long should they do it, readers are more likely to be engaged and interested. Anthropographic features of this visualization draw attention to human behavior, specifically projecting what might happen depending on how people act. Here, with the rhetorical goal of persuading readers to adopt certain behaviors and abandon others, Anthropographics connect readers with possible future versions of themselves and their world. The second project I'd like to look at, let me make myself a little larger here in the corner. The second project I'd like to look at is the New York Times article, scroll up to the top here, called An Incalculable Loss. It was published online in May 2020, after the US reached the grim milestone of 100,000 deaths due to COVID-19. This project uses anthropographics, graphics along with text and interactivity to communicate the scale of the pandemic's impact. So unlike the first project where the rhetorical goal was to persuade readers to adopt certain behaviors, this is really more about kind of conveying scale. The authors place 100,000 silhouettes of human figures in different stances and at slightly different sizes, each with a drop shadow to convey dimensionality against a plain beige background. As the reader scrolls through these figures, some are highlighted in black and have a brief annotation drawn from obituaries in local papers. For instance, unflappable New York Times journalist Alan Finder, 72 Ridgewood, New Jersey, conducted clinical research at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, Harold L. Upjohn, 91, Burlingame, California. The few details that are provided, about approximately 1% of the figures, point to additional loss and absence, not only of the details for the other 99%, but of more biographical information about these folks that would more fully convey the individuality and uniqueness of the person being represented by the silhouette. The article also temporally conveys the scale of loss. The date in 2020, along with a running tally of the number of deaths, is located in the bottom right corner and synced to the scroll. So even scrolling quickly and passing by the brief annotations, it takes quite a while to arrive at the end. The time spent scrolling evokes the scale of the tragedy. In the comment section of the article, readers remark on the experience of scrolling and reading, with one reader observing that the project, quote, touched me in a very visceral way, and another noting that, quote, I just spent the time, 1 hour and 13 minutes, to read every one of these obit clips, pausing periodically to wipe away the tears. The text of the article, appearing as the reader scrolls, amplifies this emotional force and comments explicitly on how difficult it is to grasp the fact of 100,000 people dying within a 3-month period. And you can see the scrolling kind of brings the text onto the screen. And here's a quote that kind of conveys this: 100,000, the immensity of such a sudden toll taxes our ability to comprehend, to understand that each number adding up to 100,000 represents someone among us just yesterday. The loss, as the title states, is truly incalculable. And you can see as I'm scrolling, I'm just still at the very top of the article, and kind of the text provides some more information about some of the victims and so on. So I'm going to stop sharing now and go back to the PowerPoint to wrap up my presentation. I'm going to make myself a little larger. There are several contextual features shared by these two projects. That is, features that reveal the human marks on data and make human data connections more evident. Both projects use interactivity to create an experience for the reader, one that helps highlight the human level impact of the pandemic. Whether it's scrollytelling, where scrolling triggers changes to the visualization itself, rather than simply moving the elements up and down on the screen, or interacting via the selection of variables, as in the first project, the audience is doing more than looking at the data visualization. This kind of active engagement can help readers see the relevance of the data, as in the first example, or have an emotional reaction that can make the data more meaningful, as in the second example. There are many types of interactivity that data visualization designers can use to engage readers and make for more effective communication. The text in these projects also serves to engage readers and to humanize both the people being represented by the data and the people presenting the data and its visualizations. The casual, informal tone and direct address of readers establishes these projects as a kind of communication where meaning is constructed mutually, rather than a one-way presentation of facts that readers must simply consume. Moreover, the authors position themselves not as neutral, objective reporters of fact, but rather as situated individuals who are also impacted by the pandemic. Use of stories and anecdotes in these and other data visualization projects further conveys the marks of humans as characters, authors, and readers of data. So I think these contextual features are really important in the overall anthropographic approach of these data visualizations, which are attempting to make the human data connection more vivid, more real, more actual for readers, in order to convey more effectively and also more accurately what's going on with the virus that's impacted our world and our lives. So I want to end with just a list here of other COVID-19 data visualizations that use anthropographic strategies to create accessible and impactful communications for a general audience. The first several of these are simulations. Then the next few are more focused on narrative and storytelling. And then the final group, the final 2 or 3, have to do with the scale of the virus. So simulations, storytelling, and scale are sort of the 3 categories that I've observed anthropographic data visualizations about COVID-19. I invite you to take a look at these projects, and also please feel free to leave comments and questions for me in the conference website. I'm currently working on an article on anthropographics and would love to get your feedback on this project. So thank you very much.